My name is Daniel Truhitte. I've been very fortunate in my life to be a part of some pretty wonderful productions. I knew I wanted to be a song and dance man. I actually started my career at 6 when my mother first started taking me to dance classes. And then I'd go out and I'd do all these tricks and tap and all that in a competition. And then I'd always lose to somebody to come out and sing a song. So I thought, I think I better learn how to sing. Let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. I'd heard about this part of Rolf in The Sound of Music. And I thought, man, I'd like to go audition for that. So I told my agent, he set up an audition, and I went on the lot of 20th Century Fox. And as I came around the bend, there must have been a line of about 250 blonde guys in line to go in and have a little personality shot. So I got in line and they shot a little footage. I never heard from them. I told my agent, I sure wish I would have had a chance to sing or dance or anything like that. He said, well, let me see. He went to a party, and at that party was Pamela Petrea, and she was a speech coach. And he said, I've got this young man that sings and dances. I think he probably could make a really good role. She said, you have a photograph of him? He said, yes. So I went to his car, got a photograph. She looked at it, set up a meeting with me. So I went on the lot of 20th, met Pamela Petrea. She liked me. She took me over to Argyle Productions, which was a little kind of a pretty little house they had out there on the lot of 20th, and took me in to meet Bob Weiss and Saul Chaplin. And I mean, I was so naive. These were the biggest people in the business, you know. I didn't know, you know, they were just nice guys. I was a very well-trained dancer. I mean, I had real training, and I really was pretty accomplished in that area. So they gave me some steps of jumping on things and jumping around, you know, and they had a grading system. They gave me an A. So they sent me back to Bob Weiss, and with this A, Bob said, well then, Dan, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a scene. Now this is the last scene that you'll do. This is where you will turn the family in. And he said, I want you to learn this scene and do it for me and come back in 2 days. So I looked it over and got it, went back to him, did the scene. He liked it very much. And he said, Dan, I don't have time for a screen test. They'd already started the film. They hadn't found a Rolf. So they started the film without even having Rolf cast because they couldn't find the person they were looking for. So I went over to the set, and they had a camera set up, and it was full of people. I don't know who all these people were, but I think they were pretty important. And Bob sat me down. He said, Dan, I'm going to talk to you, and I just want you to be normal. Just talk back to me, and you know. Okay, and I said, fine. Then I was sitting there. I said, Bob? He said, yes. Do you mind if I sing? He said, I didn't know you sang. I said, yes, I sing. He said, well, what do you want to sing? I said, I want to sing 16 going on 17. So I sang 16 going on 17, and honestly, and from the bottom of my heart, I'll never forget the feeling. Everybody was smiling, Bob was smiling, and it was like a highlight of my career I'll never forget. So after I finished that, I got a call from my agent that said, Dan, you've been cast as a part of Rolf in 20th Century Fox's film, The Sound of Music.
My name is Pamela Petrie. I play the piano and have done that since about the last 10, 11 years. I had been a nurse for 40 years and just retired in 2019.
I've been here in the Carolinas for 30 years. I met my wife, Tarealia. We got married, and that's how I stayed here. I cannot tell you how thankful I am to be here, you know, in my golden years and the years that I've had here in Concord and the friends that I've met. It's been an incredible, wonderful experience.
I always said it was a day of miracles because, well, number one, the miracle was that they had called and asked me if I could play, and this was the first time I had played in a church for Wilkinson's. Number two miracle was when I started to play the pipe organ, there was one pipe that made an awful racket, and every time I would hit that note, it would burn, and I thought, oh no, we'll go down here to the piano, let's try it.
We went in, picked a pew where we usually sit.
I happened to notice a couple that came in at the back, and I remember looking back there and I remember smiling at them.
He said, did you see the the pianist, he said, she smiled at me. Do we know her? And I said, well, probably, because I figured she probably had played for him at some point. And she had, but he had already made eye contact with her.
And I just kept playing. Then I noticed his wife, who I didn't know at that time who they were or anything, but I noticed her turn toward him, and she was saying something.
And I had just turned over to TJ and said, honey, I'm kind of dizzy. And then it just seemed like it got kind of dark.
I was looking straight in his face, and he said, I'm dizzy. He said, I think something's, and that's as far as he got. And when I looked at him, he was just absolutely gone.
And I just focused myself on him, and I realized that he was just staring straight ahead. He was not moving.
And I was looking at her, and I guess I stayed sitting up, and that's when I was gone.
No pulse, no breathing. I knew we were in trouble.
So at that point, I jumped up from the piano, ran back down the aisle, and I yelled, somebody call 911. And I yelled, Jay, come here a minute. And I remember his tie was tight. I tried to feel for a pulse, couldn't get one, so his wife is standing here. I said, help me get his tie undone. Loosened it up, no pulse. Jay came around and we laid him down on this pew. I remember thinking, thank you, Lord, there's no cushion on this so I can lay him down here. And at this point, someone over this direction was calling 911, and I just felt again, no pulse, and he was not breathing. So she was telling me he had a pacemaker. I said, it's not working. So I just started, and I'm bent over, but I was able to get a good compression, so I just kept on pumping.
I just jumped down and started giving him mouth to mouth, and she began to tell me, count for me.
I don't remember about how many minutes it was, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, something like that, before I heard the sirens coming. It was probably one of the hardest compressions. I felt like he had a police vest on. You know, it was so tight, and I was just really pushing as hard as I could.
Came out, cardiac arrest on Buffalo, knew it was a church. Come in, and it's in the middle of a funeral, a sanctuary full of people.
The scene, we were in one of the middle of the aisles of the church.
We usually beat them there because we're closer to our district, so we're usually already doing our patient care, gathering patient history.
We went in, we asked the fire department, where are you at? Have you delivered any shocks with the AED? And they had delivered one shock prior to our arrival.
So I started documenting for EMS, and then I continued documenting when they come.
Teamwork is the most crucial part of any one of these calls. From the person who calls 911, the dispatchers giving them information and helping them through CPR on the phone, to the fire department, to EMS. Teamwork is the #1 thing that provides a good patient outcome.
When the paramedics got here, I remember they came around to me, and I was still doing compressions, and he said, we're gonna have to get him on the floor. And I thought, this bench has been doing really good, But I said, y'all go ahead, you can get him on the floor, but I'm not gonna stop till you get him on the floor. So I kept on doing compressions, and they then laid him in the aisle, got him on the floor, and they hooked him up to the monitor. So I saw that he was in a rhythm that I knew, it was V-fib, and we can shock that. Ventricular fibrillation is just when the heart's just not really beating, it's just quivering. So if you keep it pumping and keep the blood circulating, if you can shock it, you can actually maybe get another rhythm back. So I was like, thank you, Lord. He's got a deadly rhythm, but we can shock it.
CPR could be probably for a family member 100% very tough to witness.
The pastor came back, and she was praying with me and staying with me, and I felt they were trying to distract me a little bit because they really were working on him right there. They didn't. I felt that once they got him into the ambulance, we were okay.
When you gain a pulse back, you want to get moving fast to the hospital because this patient is now critical. We transitioned care to the doctor, gave a full report of all the medications we had given, all of the procedures we had performed. and the doctor had resumed care with their team and continued to stabilize him in the emergency room.
We're all in it together, right? Just to serve the community, period. Don't matter if you're for the county, for the city, it's all about the community.
Oh, I thought about him for all through the day, all through the night. I finally broke down that night and I called the hospital. I said, "Do you have a Dan Truitt?" And they said, "Yes, we do. He's in room 2321. And I thought, I see you. Would you please let his wife know that I am praying for him and her, and just let them know that I called and asked about him." She said, "Hold on just a minute." The next thing I hear is her saying, "Mr. Truitt, the nurse that gave you CPR, she's on the phone now and would like to know how you're doing. Would you like to tell her how you're doing?" And I'm going, "Oh God." He said, "Hello?" And I went, "Mr. Truitt?" And I'm crying at this point. He said, "Yes." And I said, "Oh," I said, "you have just made my day. You have just made my day." And he said, "Well, thank you." I said, "Oh God," I said, "You were doing okay?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm doing fine." I'm like, "Oh God." And I cannot stop crying. And I'm like, "Oh," I said, "You just don't know how wonderful that makes me feel, knowing that you are okay." He said, "Yeah, they say that I might get to go home in a couple days. I'm gonna have to have a couple stents and then I'll be able to go home." I was like, praise God.
I don't know what we would have done if we would have lost Dan, because he's just a pillar in our family. I wish he could remember more. He really doesn't even remember being in the hospital. But he had some good times. Tried to get him to sing the Lord's Prayer, and he did. He remembered every word. And then they began to cut up with "God Bless the USA," and they were acting like they couldn't remember the words and switching out the cities.
Apparently I sang the Lord's Prayer with my daughter, and we sang songs together, "Proud to be an American." I wish I could remember this. I did all these things, but I don't remember them. I don't know why I don't remember them. I want to.
The nurse outside, we apologized for being a little loud, and she said, "Oh no." And that was the first time I'd seen her with her mask down a little bit. And she said, "I was singing along with you." So I felt like that was a sign that things were going to be better, a lot better.
Once I got home, I was so thankful, first of all, to be here. You know, and I didn't know to the extent of how bad it was, except what people told me. My heart had stopped 3 times. They had to resuscitate me to get me breathing again, and they were having a hard time, I guess, doing that. That's why they really were very hard on my chest with it. They broke a lot of bones, and you know, that was the only thing that I recall, that I remember, was I couldn't hardly breathe or cough or anything like that without a lot of pain. But I began to, you know, just heal, and everybody just thought it was like an incredible thing that happened, that I'm still here. That's why I want to make sure that I spend my time doing an appreciation for this length of time, however long it is, that I have, that I would not have had. So I'm very thankful for that. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, so, do.